Well, hey, everybody, welcome to the Seeing Ability podcast, where we're having a conversation about the world of people living with disabilities. And that means we're going to be talking to a lot of really interesting guests that come at this question from different perspectives. Sometimes it's going to be that adult who grew up as the kid with a disability. Sometimes it's going to be parents that are or have raised children with disabilities. And sometimes it's going to be people who are supporting that community. It could be people in healthcare, education, or the many hundreds, or if not thousands, of nonprofits we have around this country that are helping serve that community. And today, first of all, I want to thank you for tuning in. I know you got a lot of choices when it comes to listening, and we appreciate you spending time with us. You're going to enjoy our guests, because they kind of both have two of those perspectives as parents who have walked this path and as folks devoting their life to nonprofit service. So this is kind of one of our nonprofit spotlight episodes. First, before we get into who they are and that background and start talking about the topic, we always like to do the fast forward. So our friends at Reliable Tech Help have sponsored the fast forward. They are at 502-797-7399. Let's get to know our guests, Kayla and Graham. First of all, welcome to the podcast, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, nice to be here.
So number one, we'll start with Kayla. What is your favorite food?
This is hard. It's got to be between pizza and a chocolate chip cookie. Gonna reach for those every time.
Who says you couldn't have them both, right?
I mean, why not?
All right, Graham, how about you?
I'm gonna have to go with anything at Chick-fil-A.
Okay, there you go. I like it.
Fan.
Number two, Graham, we'll stay with you. What if we looked at your playlist? What kind of music are you jamming out to?
Surprisingly, I jam out to a lot of hard rock. So Nirvana was my favorite band growing up. I learned to play guitar on Nirvana songs, so you're gonna see some form of alternative grunge. But I like a lot of different music. But
okay, very good. Kayla?
My playlist right now is kind of all over the place because Owen has a heavy influence on the playlist. But if it's up to me to put on a song and dance in the kitchen, it's gonna be something with Whitney Houston.
Okay, two ends of the spectrum there. I like it. Okay, Kayla, we'll stay with you. What about there's a judgment-free zone here, a guilty pleasure TV streaming show you're enjoying, a book, a movie?
Gosh, what show? I just forgot the name. Shrinking. It's on Apple TV. I just finished the Shrinking series and it was great. I loved it.
Okay, Graham.
So my guilty pleasure right now is I'm a big golfer. So I've been watching Stick on Apple TV Plus.
Okay, there you go. And then last but not least, Graham, we'll stay with you. What is a bucket list destination that you'd love to go to?
Yeah, so I'm gonna put Norway on the list. I did ancestry.com a couple years ago and found out I'm from Scandinavia originally. I'm Viking who settled in like the Scotland area. So I'm gonna put that on the list to go see my ancestral home.
There you go. Well, having myself in the last couple of years had a trip to Sweden, Denmark, and Norway, I can say you definitely should go. It's pretty amazing.
Well, it's on the bucket list.
All right. Kayla, how about you?
So what's funny is the first spot that popped up is not this big, massive, so far away. But it's true for us. But my one spot on my list is to be able to take my son to Kings Island, a theme park, which sounds so simple, but he's got a lot of needs. And so to try to coordinate and figure out and how to kind of make stuff work for him is definitely, there's a lot of work that goes into it. So, but to be able to take him to a theme park, because I grew up going to theme parks, Kings Island specifically. And so would love to be able to take him for him to get to experience that.
I love that. And usually at the end of the episode, I'm asking folks, we want to hear your stories and we want to hear podcast episode ideas. So if you're listening to this podcast and you've got a really good, maybe you work at a theme park and you guys have got a great accessibility program, or you've had an experience learning how to navigate theme parks with a kid who has differences, hit me up. We'd like to have you on a future episode and maybe we'll get Kayla there. So
please.
We can accomplish two goals. All right. Well, that's the fast forward. Thank you, guys. So first of all, just a little background. Graham, I'll start with you to just introduce who you are, how you got it, what you guys do there at Tucker's house, and then your other guest, Kayla, you can introduce her, and I'll let her talk about what she does.
Yeah. So my name's Graham Honeycutt. I'm the executive director of a nonprofit called Tucker's House. And we serve families who have children with disabilities, and we provide home modifications for those families. So that's our mission, what we do day in, day out. We're here in the Middle Tennessee area. Would love to expand someday, but that's our service area right now. Been doing it for 5 years. And then Kayla is our program director, and I'll let her tell you about her role and her
Yeah.
background.
Yeah, so my name is Kayla Tortai, and I have been with Tucker's House a little over 2 years now. And I have the privilege to get to work with the families that we get to serve. So right now we service around 30 miles surrounding Franklin, and I get to be part of it with the family every step of the way from when they first reach out to us to our home assessment. So I get to go into the home and get to know the families and see kind of where those pain points are in the home and help be part of figuring out the solutions and working with our partners to help make these modifications happen for the families.
Fantastic. Well, I love that. And then Graham, back to you. Tell us a little bit about how did you get into this work?
So my oldest daughter, Michaela, was born with disabilities, and so we were actually a Tucker's House family first.
Mm,
So I had a chance to meet the founder, Sunny, and Sandra, who's still around with us as a therapist as well, at our home, and they were just looking at different modifications that we needed. So unfortunately, she passed away 6 years ago at
mm,
the age of 5. But so we never really got to realize the full picture of what those home modifications would look like and be like.
sure.
But I stayed in touch with the organization, and Sonny, our founder, was looking to retire, and so my name came to her mind, and we just started talking, and so I became the succession plan from the
Wow.
founder. So, and that was it's hard to believe that that's been over 5 years, but it has been. So
Well, what a wonderful way to take your experience with your daughter and transition it into something that's helping families on an ongoing basis. That's really beautiful. And a lot of trust. When a founder entrusts the organization to that next executive director, that's a big compliment. So
That's
kudos to
right.
you.
yeah, it was a process to trust. I think there was like a good 18-month transition, as there should have been. But yeah, it's really my pleasure. Like I just feel like I get to bring Michaela along to work every day, and
Yeah.
I think about her every day anyway. But just bring her along and say, what would you have me do? And when there's like a big decision, I just pray about it and say, okay, well, what would make Michaela proud? That's kind of my
Yeah.
filter of how I
I
do
love that.
everything.
And Kayla, you also work at this not just as a job, but as a passion. Tell us about your back this world.
Yeah. So I have an 11-year-old with special needs. He was born premature. And so just kind of from the start, we were kind of thrown into special needs world and kind of having to learn as we go. But I heard of Tucker's House when he was little. Someone mentioned it to me because he is a wheelchair user and we were having some accessibility issues in our home. But I did not reach out because we leased our home and I didn't think that there would be anything they could do for us, which I was wrong. I should have reached out. But I was a stay-at-home mom for 7 years with him and started to try to get back in the work world and really had a hard time because being a special needs mom, that is kind of looked at from certain organizations as kind of a challenge of, oh, if he's in the hospital or something that's going to take time away. And so
Sure.
um, there was an opening at Tucker's House. And I knew in my heart it was the right spot to be in. And being able to interview and talk with Graham and talk with the team and realize that my role as a special needs mom adds so much to this, and it gives me a whole new perspective being able to go in and work with these families, not just as a Tucker's House employee, but as a mom, as a human, as someone who's in it with them. And they are my people, they're my community. So it definitely gives me a whole new level of passion for this work, for sure.
Yeah, well, what a blessing to the organization that both of you, when you're relating to clients, having that personal perspective really enriches your work. And it kind of starts with acceptance. Most of our listeners, they're
Hmm.
kind of in this world or they know people in this world. And most, other than adoptive parents, didn't really expect to be on the special needs path. So I guess I'll start with you, Graham. What role did acceptance play in your journey? What were your takeaways? It's easier to look backwards, right? What did you learn from
Yeah.
it? And what advice do you give to families who are really just kind of dealing with the blow of like life's going to be different?
Yeah, I think that last point you made is a big part of acceptance. It's just really accepting that life is going to be different and
Mhm.
that, a lot of the plans and expectations and, the way you thought things would go with your child, they're going to be different. But that doesn't make it worse, you know.
Mm.
Mm.
So I actually have five other typical children other than Michaela. So like I've had that journey with typical children as well. And it's like, I had a very special relationship with Michaela, and it's like even though there are all these challenges there too, there was a lot of beauty and a lot of, she taught me a lot. All our kids teach us things, but she taught me more. I would say, I won't let my other kids listen to the podcast, but I just learned a lot. So I think a lot of the acceptance is, um, just doing a lot of inner work and understand that it just takes time. Take your time with it. You don't have to, like, you're not gonna flip some switch and be able to accept things right away.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a journey, it's gonna be a process. Kayla and I both like to say, like, what's the next best thing? Like, what's the next best step I can take along the journey? So that's what I would say in terms of acceptance.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's really powerful that just because it's going to be different doesn't mean it's going to be worse, right?
Mhm.
Doesn't mean it's going to be bad. And I think you will probably attest having five other kids that if you thought when they were born you had a plan of how it was going to go, life probably taught you that that plan isn't necessarily set in stone either, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I can't say, people ask us because we have such a big family too. Like, I'm not sure we would have had this many other kids if we didn't have Michaela. Like, she just opened our world to, life and just differences and accepting that, we aren't going to be perfect parents. And, she just opened us up to a different world of love and acceptance and inclusion, all those different things that, we wouldn't expected. So yeah, they teach you a lot. And
Mhm.
I just
I
think it's
love
an
that.
important part of the journey. So,
So, Kayla, you talked about premature birth. And again, when you guys were expecting Owen and you were maybe going to register for gifts, probably wheelchair wasn't on the list. So,
Yeah, no wheelchairs or AFOs or
yeah,
all this.
so acceptance, what was that like for you and your husband, and what's your takeaways? And when you're talking with families, like what advice do you give people that are still struggling with that initial part of like we're on a different path?
Yeah, well, I think it hits you like a brick wall, especially when, Owen was 9 weeks early and it was a very quick birth and very traumatic. And so of course you're like, what, just trying to figure out what's happening. It feels like the rug's kind of been pulled out from under you. And then Owen got his diagnosis when he was still in the NICU. And I think there's lots of pieces to it, right? Because everybody grieves differently, everybody processes differently, and so I think first and foremost, like allowing space for what emotions do come up, whether that be anger, whether that be sadness, whether that be fear, of accepting and allowing yourself to feel whatever that is that surfaces, um, as well as letting yourself feel that, like Graham mentioned, doing the inner work, talking with therapists and support group, like that is huge, especially in those early days of really allowing people in. I was a big researcher, which can be a blessing and a curse because I think early on, you doctors tell you information and it's just like that is what it is because the doctor said so because they know more about your child than you do. At least that's how it felt for me early on. But of learning to listen to my own voice as his mom and my own intuitions and trusting, okay, no, actually I do know him really well. I have seen his patterns and being able to speak up and kind of become more of a team member in terms of like managing his care and being able to speak into insights with the doctors, I think was a huge turning point for me to feel like I was part of it as opposed to just kind of being told how I needed to care for my son. um, and so yeah, I think that's a huge piece of it, of building that confidence. And then the other thing that popped up is understanding that like acceptance, at least for me, it's new with every season. It's not like you just can kind of accept, okay, this is he's not walking until he's 2 years old. Okay, I can accept that. It's not just like a one and done thing. Each season there's kind of new grief that surfaces of, Owen's going to middle school this year, and there's grief that's surfacing with that because it's not, what you think of for your child when you imagine them being able to start this new chapter. And so I think as he's gotten older, I've kind of learned to accept that with change. A question I asked a lot when he was young with other parents is, does it get easier? And, part of it does. Certain things get easier, you accept, but then there's also new challenges that you have to grieve and new experiences you got to navigate. So it's kind of just the up and down, and that is part of it. And I think accepting that, and then the other big shift for me was shifting my perspective instead of like what we're not getting, what he is missing out on, or what we're missing out on as a family, is what does this allow to happen? Because we're on this different path. Like, what does this make space for? And what does this allow opportunities for our family and connections and people we get to meet? And so that's been a really kind of beautiful space to kind of lean into, of instead of it being more of a negative of, yeah, it's maybe it's not going how we wanted it to, but like, what is this allowed to happen for our family to be able to experience? So yeah.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Now that we've kind of come to terms with we're on this path,
Right.
seeing the opportunities that unfolds versus the challenge, only the challenges.
Exactly. Because there's so many beautiful little moments, and I can think of even when Owen was in the hospital. He was in the hospital a ton, which that is the last place you want to be with your child. And any parent that has, been in the hospital, especially with a little one who's hates IVs and blood work, like those are awful, awful experiences. But there were so many sweet moments, where we were able to connect as a family and be able to play games, as a family, or have family come in and play games on a hospital bed. That, moments that he talks about now of like positive memories. And so I'm like, oh, praise the Lord, we got some positive memories out of it. But,
Yeah.
finding those little pockets of good and connection, I think, are super important.
Well, connection is a great word, and you mentioned parents connecting with support groups and other things. So you hear a lot about building your village, and obviously you're an organization that supports people, so you're part of that village. But like, talk to us about, maybe Graham, what advice do you give for parents on how they can reach out, and what role that connectivity, that village, plays in their journey?
Yeah, I think probably the biggest thing to building a village is to be vulnerable. And I know that's hard to be vulnerable, but just to communicate your need,
Mm,
and communicate the needs of your child. And so, certainly that plays in for us at Tucker's house. Like, they're communicating any, like, I'm struggling in my home. What can we do here? But even outside the home in your community, it's just saying, to your friends or your family, or, if you are going to another meetup with other parents, like going there and be vulnerable with them, and not just saying like, no, I'm good in this, support group. Like, I don't really need anything, or it's worse for you. It's like, just, really open yourself up to, I'm struggling and I could use some help. And, that's going to help you, because if people don't know what the need is of you and your child, like, they're not going to be able to surround you and support you in the best way. So I know it seems counterintuitive, but I would just say be vulnerable and communicate.
and are you granting our audience permission that if they suffer from super mom, super dad syndrome, that they have to be the perfect parent and can never admit they need help? You're giving them permission to do so?
Absolutely. I mean, um, yeah, that's a really good point, right? Because it's like, sometimes I also found like people would put that on me, and so
Yeah.
it was like almost something like I had to wear.
Hmm.
Like, I remember getting a lot too, that like, well, special needs parents are special, and or like, God only gives children with special needs like special children, and all these different things. And it's almost like I didn't feel comfortable wearing that. It's like, I'm not any different from you. Like, I just happen to have like a child with needs. And um you know I also saw some parents that weren't great parents to their children with special needs. So I'm like, well, we're not all special. And it's sort of like that would put distance between us. It's like, no, I'm not that special, right? Like, yes, I have different challenges, And maybe in some ways I was dealt a difficult hand, you could say that. But you know, I kind of resisted that distance. It's like, no, I just want to be like you. And I think that's for our children too. It's like, okay, well, our children may not learn and grow and walk and talk and do everything in a typical way, but they're not like, don't make them different, you know, just include them in with what
Yeah.
you're doing. Like I don't know that. So I think that can also be like not accepting the labels put on you or your child
Yeah.
necessarily. Like just having a good little bit of thick skin too to know, okay, what's good that I can let pass through and what do I kind of need to just let bounce off me.
I love that. So, Kayla, probably whether you were working for Tucker's House or not, because of Owen, you get parents who are early in the journey who come to you for advice and stuff. So
Mhm.
this building the village piece, what was it like for you guys, and what advice do you recommend to parents as they want to connect to build their community?
The village is so difficult, but so important. Um, I think there's again, I have a couple like perspectives, one of being a special needs mom, and then one coming in and kind of experiencing this with Tucker's House with families and kind of being part of that village for them. So, from the parenting side, it's so hard because you are trying so hard to understand your child's diagnosis. You are caring for them. You are doing all the things that then at the end of the day, it's like you hardly have enough energy for feeding yourself and, drinking your cold coffee. And so let alone trying to open your home up to friends to come over or family or whoever. So the village can be really challenging because I think, at least for me, it did feel like a lot of work. It felt like energy to try to let somebody in. It also felt like I was carrying such heaviness that, you run into someone, they're like, how are you doing? To give them an honest answer just felt way too heavy and way too much. And so
Yeah.
it is sometimes easier to just be like, we're good, we're figuring it out, kind of a thing. But to Graham's point, like that vulnerability of actually, like, we are having a hard time and I'm trying to figure it out. Don't even know what I need right now. But being open and honest and allowing people to see you where you are, even if it's not pretty and it's not perfect, I think is huge. But it's much easier said than done because, you kind of get in your mode and every family, I think that's been one huge insight with Tucker's House. I laugh because I feel like I kind of get to be a fly on the wall of other people's experiences and kind of seeing what their everyday looks like by getting to go into the homes, and everybody figures out their routine. Everybody figures out what works for them. And this is kind of what we do in a day. And I think especially with special needs families, that medications and G-tube feeds, we kind of become these creatures of habit. And you just kind of get so in the routine that it's very easy to forget to make sure you're adding in community, make sure you're adding in those support groups and places that do give you an outlet so that you can, put that hat down of mom, of nurse, physical therapist, chef, all the things, and be able to just like, oh, this is a lot and this is where I'm at and these are all the feelings that I feel. So I think that piece of it is huge for sure, of letting yourself be seen for where you are.
Yeah, I love the themes in both of your answers of that vulnerability, but
Mhm.
yet also the idea that just because you have a lot of challenges doesn't make you different. It just makes you have different challenges. We're
For sure.
all parents have challenges, all people have
For
challenges. We
sure.
just we just typically answer, I'm fine. And we don't
Right.
we don't we don't admit those challenges. I love that. Um, you alluded to it. We are so busy, parents taking care of their kids. Often when I'm talking to people in this space, self-care naturally gets put down the list. It's like if it's an all hands on deck kind of fight or flight attitude of like taking care of your kid, uh, mom or dad falls down the list. But when you do that, obviously there are consequences to that.
Mhm.
Either one of you, you're both nodding your head. Want to maybe I'll start with you, Kayla. Want to speak to how is that in your own journey? There's no judgment here. And then other parents you see, how are you helping them just even have an awareness of that issue?
Yeah, no, I think that has been a big part of my journey. I think as a, a recovering people pleaser, Enneagram 9, very others focused. It's very, very easy for me to just kind of self forget and get so in the mode, especially when Owen's got lots of doctor's appointments, or he's not feeling well, or he's sick, or something big is going on with him. It's like, okay, Kayla, we have to literally set timers on our phone to remember to eat lunch, or we have to set timers on our phone to remember to like pause and drink water, or step outside and go for a 5-minute walk. Because it's like, especially in crisis, kind of like all hands on deck. But even just in the day to day, again, it's something I have to be really, really intentional about. And I'll be honest, when he was young, it was like, that's not even on my list. Like, I don't have the capacity for that. So I actually really have leaned more into that and realized, kind of felt the effects of me self-forgetting for so long in these last few years, as I've been really trying to be more intentional about that, because I have learned I am a much better mom. I am much more available and present when I'm, taking care of myself. Put your oxygen mask on first, as they say. But it really does make a huge, huge difference. But it also, working with so many families with Tucker's House, it is comforting to know, you're not alone in that. Every single door that we walk in, these families, like, I wish, yes, we do home modifications, but I wish we could, do massages for moms. I wish we could do, and dads, all the caregivers, because it is a very, very common struggle among caregivers and parents, to just really prioritize their child and do whatever is required of them, even if that means physically hurting themselves or risking their own health by doing transfers and things like that. Parents are just, I walk away just so amazed of what parents are willing to do to care for their children, and just how much they're willing to sacrifice to give their kids what they need.
Yeah, I love that. So, Graham, what would be your advice for parents who, like I said, their own needs are way down the list? What would you tell them about making sure they do find space for self-care?
Yeah. Well, in full transparency, I think I am better at this now than I was.
Yeah,
And I think part of my journey too, right, is, having Michaela and then like losing Michaela. So it was like there was a lot of self-care and grief after
yeah,
she was gone.
sure.
So, I've been in therapy ever since Michaela died. And so I think, now I have this perspective, but it's like if I look back to where I was, it's like I'm not sure I was like as I'm better at self-care now than I was back then.
Yeah,
But I think my advice would just to be really honest. Like I think that we can tell ourselves a story, and we can tell ourselves that story sometimes so much that we believe it to be true, but it's not the truth. And so I would just, wherever you are, just try to be honest. And like, again, if you can't be honest with yourself, you can't be honest with others. That's that vulnerability piece, right? Like,
yeah,
I'm struggling, I need help, and then you can communicate that. And I think Kayla made a good point too with the vulnerability piece. Like, you don't have to be vulnerable to everybody, like you don't have to
great.
go, like, you don't have to go like checking out your groceries and be like, I'm really struggling, to the teller where they're like, hey, how are you today? It's like the right people at the right time when you're ready to be vulnerable.
Yeah,
But just to be honest, like I think it's just being honest with yourself. And then yeah, just once you can truly be honest and lay the table out and look at what your challenges are in front of you, find those trusted people. And it may even be more than your spouse and family. Like I've really, found, like I said, been in therapy and counseling. It's like I have that person. Like I can even take some of those things and process that through and be honest. So that would kind of be my first step. And then from there you can find out what works for you. Like for my wife and I, like we take a trip every year, and like we actually just got back on Tuesday. So we like went to a national park, we got away. And we did that when Michaela was living, and we do that now. And people are like, how with 5 kids at home can you do this every year? Like I'm like, because we prioritize it, we make it happen, and it's important. And it's like we need that. Like we're
yeah,
communicating that need. Like, we need to step away. And so yeah, but I think it goes back to that honesty piece, figuring out what it is then you can figure out what works for you within that. And it may not be a trip for you. It may not be like, hey, I know like the families we serve, it may not be financially possible for you. It may not like your child's needs, like you may not be able to do that. But what is that for you? Is that just like going to a movie? Is that finding another nonprofit like Hope Kids that provides respite care opportunities for like
Sure.
siblings and friends? It's like, what are those resources? Like once you figure out what it is that you need and what's possible, then
Yeah.
finding the resources to be able to
Mhm.
do that.
I love that. Well, and one form of self care might be a good segue to the work that you guys do, because obviously making changes to your space and how you navigate it is a big piece of navigating daily life. So, Caleb, most people listening, they probably have a sense, okay, we make home modifications. Give us some stories of how that really plays out in a real family's life, of like, what does that mean and how does it change their world with those modifications?
Yeah, so we do specifically home modifications, and as you can imagine, the trickiest, most unsafe spot in the home is the bathroom. Bath time is challenging for just about all of our families, but um, so we do some bathroom renovations where we can remove a lot of the bathtub inserts and do a roll-in shower for wheelchair users. We do roll under sinks. We widen doorways, we remove carpet and are able to add hard surface flooring, ramps, so entrance and exits of the home. Um, we also do equipment as well for families, so ceiling tracks, wall lifts, and things like that to help with transfers, because that pops up a ton with families who we're coming into the home and they might reach out to us about a ramp, but then we kind of get into the home and we're like, okay, but how is the bath time going? And they're like, oh yeah, my 60-pound son, I lift him up and down into this low bathtub, every single
Mhm.
day, and I'm transferring him to his bed every single day. And it's like, well, what happens when you get sick? What happens when you throw your back out? And in some families they are reaching out to us about that, but it can look a lot of different ways for families and can truly be a game changer. We just finished actually this week a bathroom for a family. He's 15 years old, and I'm sorry, he's 14 years old, and his mom was having to assist with every time he needed to go to the bathroom. First of all, his wheelchair was too wide to even get through the door. So she's having to pick up her 14-year-old son to get him
Mhm.
into the bathroom, set him on the toilet, let him do. And then if he needed a bath, she's picking him up and putting him in the bathtub. He's completely capable of being able to wash himself cognitively. He's super sharp. So the only reason she was having to be involved is because of the limitations of the space. And so we were able to come in. And she also, his bedroom is on the second floor. So she was throwing her 14-year-old on her back, twice a day to get him up and get him down. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like how are you walking? How are you standing? But she was like,
Right.
this is just what we do. Like, this is just how it's done. Um, but so we were able to finish that bathroom earlier this week, and she's like, I can't even, she's like, there are no words to even explain how amazing this is, that now my son can go into the bathroom and he can have his privacy as a 14-year-old boy who's only getting older, who's only going to want more privacy and space. And he deserves that. He deserves to be able to have a space that is made for him, that he can, take a deep breath when he gets home and know he has what he needs and it's safe and accessible for him. So it's pretty cool to get to be part of those moments with families.
Yeah, I love that. So, Graham, if folks are wanting to look at your socials, see pictures or videos of stories like this, and learn just more about what you guys do, first of all, give us your website.
Yeah, so our website's tuckershouse.org. So that's a place to go for all different types of information. And we have, all the different resources on there. But one I'd love to highlight is I can now say it's award winning. We have a show that we produce called House to Home. We won a recently run a Telly Award. And it is our version of an HGTV style show that highlights, behind the scenes. And we really let the families tell their stories and show the work that Kayla does every day behind the scenes, like what it, everything from what does it look like when the floor is ripped up to, the finished project process and the project. So
I love
for
that.
them to
So
pick that
how
up.
different ways that the community gets behind you? I can imagine you have volunteers, you probably have individual donors, you may have corporate sponsors. Hear what you're, tell us how people get involved.
Yeah, so we do have all those different opportunities to get involved. Again, just reach out to us. You can do that through our website. You can also call us. I know you had numbers on earlier, so 615-310-5224. But yeah, definitely reach out to us and let us know. If you want to get involved and you're a family, we have a button on the website where you can apply, and you can start just with an inquiry, which is just a short little inquiry. It takes you just a couple minutes to fill out. That'll get you some information. Then Kayla can coordinate with you, and we do applications from there. So if there's a family in need or someone knows that's in our service area, they can do it that way. And then there's a donate button on there that just shows you all the different ways that you can donate and be involved. And yeah, I just encourage people to go there and to reach out and get in touch.
Yeah, it's fabulous. What a difference you guys are making in people's lives. I knew we were going to run the risk with both of you because number one, you're doing great work with your organization, and two, you each have your own compelling story that we're going to run out of time. So I've got to kind of land the plane here. But what I usually like to wrap up with my guests is like, let's say you were each invited to speak at a local nonprofit, maybe a children's hospital, to a group of families that are newer to this journey. You know, their kids are maybe 6 years or less, a variety of diagnosis. And this is a way oversimplification, but in the interest of time, you had to boil it down to like two or three really big pieces of advice as they're helping their child develop on this journey. I'll start with you, Graham. What would be those big nuggets that you would give families?
Yeah, I think the first thing that comes to mind is you are enough, and but you will need help.
Mm,
You know, you are enough to handle the challenge. And yes, it's gonna be tough, and there's gonna be really hard days. But you know, with that belief and everything, like you're enough to handle the challenges. And but yeah, but also like you're gonna need help, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I love that. Okay, Kayla, how about you?
Um, I would say of learning how to be an advocate. I think that that is a skill set that is not taught. You just kind of are thrown into the fire and kind of have to learn. And I'm talking from now advocating for your child for insurance, with doctors, with teachers, with church, with everything. It learning how to speak up and use your voice and advocate for your child's needs and not kind of settle. I think is a huge, huge piece of building that confidence and also helping teach your child how to then learn how to advocate for themselves. And then I think the other piece, which might not apply to everybody, but I think we have tried to be really, really intentional with Owen. He is in a wheelchair, but he's verbal and he's just like any other 11-year-old boy and wants to talk and do all the things that other 11-year-old boys are doing. He just physically can't keep up with a lot of those things. And so finding community for him, helping be really intentional of going to special needs groups where there are friends his age, because able-bodied friends, he can, those are easy to find. He has those all over the place, but we really do have to be intentional to seek out that special needs community. But it's wonderful because there's, he can meet an older person in a wheelchair or a high school in a wheelchair that can share information with him, and they could even say the same thing I'm saying, but it's going to hit different because it's someone who is in a chair who is experiencing it. So I think being really intentional to not just carve out that community for yourself, but also, for your kiddo.
Fantastic. Well, again, thank you guys for the work you do. Thank you for being on the podcast. Love talking to both of you.
Thanks for having us.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much.
So for our listeners, we would love to not, we're a little bit of a best kept secret with the Seeing Ability podcast. So if you enjoyed this episode, please like the podcast, rate and review it. Go to our Facebook page and follow that page, and then share this episode with somebody that you think could benefit. I don't know about you, but listening to some of their insights, I think there's a lot of parents that would feel heard and seen and validated listening to what they shared today. So please give that gift of sharing this episode with others. I mentioned earlier, maybe it's a Kings Island employee or people we know. You've got great other people that have great stories around the country. We'd love to have them on. I do 2 episodes a month right now. One is an individual or a family traveling this path, and the other is a great nonprofit. And again, website, tuckershouse.org. If they
Correct.
want to go find something like that, maybe that donate button. I think I might be checking
Right.
that out. I might be checking that out myself after today. I was pretty motivated. So again, great work that you guys do. Thank you guys for listening. Please share this episode. We'll see everybody next time.